You're listening to the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us this week. It's episode number 7 of the Angry Marks Rewind podcast here at AngryMarks.com, your number one source for pro wrestling, mixed martial arts news, and information. If you want to get a hold of me on Twitter, please do so at RowanUnra. Also, you can send me an email at angrymarksrewind@gmail.com. We actually have a viewer question, but we'll get to that at the end of the show. My co-host for the third week in a row, and the gentleman who has now become the longest reigning co-host of the Angry Marks Rewind podcast, my friend, Mike Poulin. Mike, how are you today? Mike, did we lose you? God damn it, Mike.
Shit.
Oh, wait, there you are.
Okay.
I got it. I haven't mastered my mixer yet. I need to turn up the volume.
Crank it up.
This is what happens when I get...
Crank it up like a Young Stallions match.
This is what happens when I get new equipment and I haven't mastered it yet. We're trying it out too soon.
Too soon.
But I'm not going to edit anything. I'm going to keep all that in. Mike, how you doing today? Let's try that again.
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing not too bad. It's Sunday afternoon on September 23rd. It's cold as a mother out there. It's only about... We went from a nice, warm, sort of summer season, and then it just became fall, like, overnight, and now it's like 35 degrees, which is, maybe 2 degrees Celsius for us, real temperature people, so.
Yep.
You went to
next week we have a Ring of Honor show to cover, don't we? So we don't have to pick a show for next week.
Yeah, I suppose not. Unless we want to get really ambitious and double dip. If not, we can stick with Death Before Dishonor next week and then follow up with something else thereafter. I haven't even picked a show for episode 8.
We can wait until next week to do that pick.
It could be a surprise, yeah.
Yeah.
You went to an indie show on Friday.
I did. Limitless Wrestling's 30-year anniversary. Pretenders Beware.
Talk to us about that.
Limitless Wrestling is a company that's been around about 3 years, because this was their 3-year anniversary. And what they basically put, like, they bring in a lot of names. Well, they bring in names. They had Brian Cage and Sami Callihan on this one. And on this show, we had Chris Dickinson going over Brian Cage in the opener, and a rematch from their match back in March, where Brian Cage won. And then in the second match, we had Christian Casanova, managed by Stokely Hathaway, who... if you listen to our Ring of Honor reports, you might recognize the guy who used to manage Moose. Moose. And he defeated Kevin Blackwood, who's an upcoming guy from, I think, New York. And then we also had, what else? Shoot. I'm forgetting, we had Colt Cabana going over Anthony Green, the Retrosexual, with his Platinum Honeys.
That's a great name.
The Retrosexual.
He's into women in their 60s. We said
70s.
We said of the 60s, not in their 60s.
What was our middle show match? Oh, the middle show match was a scramble that saw Ace Austin go over Sami Callihan, Jessica Havoc, Matt Cross, and a couple others whose names escape me right now. We had a women's tag with Ashley Vox and Willow Nightingale taking the loss to Chris Statlander and Devianne. And then after the match, Anthony Green came out and super kicked Vox for whatever reason.
Women's Evolution.
Women abuse in wrestling, never. That never happens. We also had, for some reason, some of the stuff has escaped. But the main event was Ace Romero going over JT Dunn, and their next show, and then Maxwell Jacob Friedman, who we talked about on our All In show that unfortunately had some technical difficulties, who had left Limitless Wrestling back in March. He returned, and that led to JT Dunn turning heel and joining up with him. And that'll lead into their Limitless's next show at the end of November, which will feature Josh Briggs going against Chris Dickinson, as well as Impact Tag Champions LAX, and Darby Allin are also advertised for this card so far. And the tickets for that will go on sale October 8th.
So overall, you sound like you had a fun time.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yep.
Okay. Great. Well,
Yep.
I'm going to open the door here because the cats are trying to get in and they're bugging me with their. So
You're knocking.
bear with
You
me, everyone.
can't come in. Do 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 do.
You guys can come in, but you got to be quiet. Like
Oh,
that.
good luck with that.
Like that ever happens.
Just don't step on their tails.
So this week's episode is a rather random pay-per-view, but before we get into that, I just want to send out two quick shout-outs. The first one, bit of a downer. A friend of my family's passed away this week, and growing up in a small, very small rural southern Manitoba farming community, all the families are very close-knit, and this guy was very close to my family. I went to school with his son for probably about 12 years. We became, probably best friends. He was best friends with my dad, and this week he passed away. And he actually was the one that introduced me to a young tag team in 1991 known as the Steiner Brothers. In the town I grew up in, there was only maybe 3 or 4 people that had a satellite, and he was one of them. And he would record all these shows from Japan. And he showed me the match. I believe it was from the January 4th, 1991 show. Was the Steiners versus Hase and Sasaki, I believe it was.
I've heard about that.
And that was my first exposure to the Steiners. So, Lawrence, we're going to miss you, buddy. And we love you. And take care of my dad while you're up there. And on a lighter note, I hope that everyone who's listening to this thinks that the sound quality on my end is a little bit better. Tried to upgrade my equipment. And I did so by watching a YouTuber by the name Podcastage. And it's run by a guy named Andrew Scott. And if you are looking for any sort of tech reviews, mostly on microphones, on audio interfaces, on mixers, check out the Podcastage YouTube channel. He also has a podcast on Spotify called Andrew Scott Says. I think that's what it's called. Anyways, go onto YouTube. Look up Podcastage. I, based on his recommendation, picked up the Neewer NW800 microphone and the Pile Pro 10 MXU mixer, which has allowed us to start the show with a little bit of music, and hopefully the sound quality is a little bit better. So check it out on YouTube, Podcastage. And also subscribe to the Angry Marks podcast channel.
Yes.
Those are my plugs out of the way. Our show this week is the WWF 2001 Insurrextion pay-per-view, which came from
Earl's Court in London.
This seemed like an awfully random pay-per-view, and I'm trying to figure out why you picked it. It's not really the anniversary of anything. It's kind of a standalone show, so what made you pick this one?
I think it's one that not a lot of people talk about for just the reasons you just gave. It's also a show that's in England, so a lot of the American folk probably haven't seen it. Unless they were able to get a tape of it or something.
I do recall my local video store in about 2003 getting this show in. I don't think it was one that I ever paid too much attention to because, like I said, in the grand scheme of WWF in 2001, it didn't. This was a standalone show. This was pretty much a glorified house show, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, basically, of course, WWE does their tours of London, of the UK, twice a year, right? After Mania and then before Survivor Series. Well, before they were doing tours of UK, this is what they did: is they had the one-off, the random pay-per-views in England. You got from like '98 until '03, I think. You had Capital Carnage, you had Insurrextion, you had Rebellion. I believe the original No Mercy was also in England.
So this took place in, like you said, Earl's Court. Is that
Earl's Court?
That's the name
That's
of.
where the UK Championship tournament happened.
Okay.
Yep.
So this was broadcast both in the UK, and they announced, strangely enough, this was also being broadcast in Australia live.
And at WWF New York somehow.
Where almost no one was there to watch it.
No one wants to pay for their overpriced food.
Did you ever go to WWF New York?
No.
Okay. Well, apparently you weren't missing much.
Nope.
It was like Applebee's on steroids.
Ironic because it's a WWE restaurant and you talk about steroids.
Oh, come on now. So
we start with a Regal segment where he's talking to, I guess, Angle on the phone, saying every match on the show has changed, except the main event. But we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah, there was a lot of flack because there were so many lineup changes on this show, even leading up to the day of the show. the local TV was still advertising Benoit versus Regal and Angle versus Jericho. And
That's what I was thinking, and that's what I was thinking too, is that it was going to be Angle, Jericho, and Regal, Benoit.
That would have been so much better. I mean,
yeah, and
not that. I mean, what they gave us here was probably the two best matches on this show. But I've been looking for Regal Benoit on a big stage for a long time, and I don't think we ever did get it.
We got random matches like the one, I think it was the Pillman Memorial. Or no, was it the World Wrestling Peace Festival in like '96?
No, the Pillman Memorial, I think, was probably the highest profile one. They had gone back and forth on Nitro a couple times, but it was like a 6-minute TV match.
5-minute matches, probably.
Right.
Like 5 or 6 minutes, including probably commercials in there somewhere too.
All right, so walk us through this. What I would call one of the highlights of this show is the opening segment with Vince in Regal's office.
Yes, Regal's on the phone talking to Angle, saying that everything, all the card has been changed, which prompts Vince to come in and yell at Regal because the card has been changed.
Why is he yelling at Regal?
And he said,
"You changed the show, Vince."
Because he doesn't realize who actually changed the show, which we'll get to in a minute. And he said, "You put yourself in the Queen's Cup," which actually kind of makes sense because it's in England. And then Regal said, "I had nothing to do with these changes." And Vince is like, "Well, if you had nothing to do with it, and I had nothing to do with it, then who changed the show?"
Dun dun dun.
Enter in Linda McMahon, who just stands stoically.
She has to act.
She just stands there until Vince realizes she's there. No, he's like in the middle of a yelling fit, and he hears a knock on the door and just says, "Come in." Because that's what you do when you're yelling at somebody and you get somebody at the door.
I believe Linda doesn't actually walk. I think she has rollers on the bottom of her feet, and she just slides in without moving her legs.
Yes.
And Vince asks her, "What's with all these changes?" And Linda says, "Just like in our marriage, change can be good. Fans in the UK deserve to see the best."
I am a fembot.
So
then Vince throws another fit.
Vince is losing his mind here.
Yes, for some reason he has Regal about foot and mouth disease. He's like, "Okay, am I susceptible to it?" And then
no, Vincent.
Regal started saying something. He said, "That's disgusting."
So we've established that every single match that had been previously advertised, even on the television on that day, had been changed except for the main event, which actually was changed. This was supposed to be Austin versus Undertaker in a singles match and Triple H versus Kane, but since Kane was working his broken arm gimmick from the week prior, Kane wasn't on this show.
Right. Also, Big Show and Test has changed because Test is hurt, even though Test appears, and we'll get to that in a minute.
So this opening interview segment, or this opening Vince segment, went 6 minutes. Now, there were reports that the sound system didn't work in the arena, and the live crowd didn't hear any of this, so they had no idea that any of the matches had changed.
Whoops.
So you can imagine
British people and their sound systems.
You can imagine their frustration when they realized that what they had paid for and what they were expecting was not going to come to pass. Our announcers for this show is Michael Cole and Paul Heyman. As it turns out,
Ross not making a trip for the show.
No, apparently he was sick. He didn't make the trip, and part of me likes the Michael Cole Heyman pairing because Mr. Vintage is way better at being the butt of the heels jokes. So when someone like Lawler or Heyman was, ragging on him, because Michael Cole has far less credibility as a human being, he's far easier to make fun of.
Oh, poor Michael Cole.
Frosted tip Michael Cole, nonetheless.
Oh, frosted tips.
Opening match, we got Eddie Guerrero taking on Grandmaster Sexay. And
I didn't realize they're still around this late in 2001. I know he was around for WrestleMania 17 because he was in the dark match on that show.
Right. No, they were still way over. And is anything better than Brian Christopher's shovel dance?
Unfortunately, this match could have been much better with a little bit more time to it.
Brian Christopher, he gets a huge pop. This guy was still over like crazy in 2001. Eddie comes down, and he was in sort of mid. He didn't have his best mullet, but it was still up there.
Latino Heat. No lowrider though.
Well, they don't have
Yeah.
they don't have lowriders in England.
What do they have?
They got like buggies and stuff.
They ride on the wrong side of the road.
Maybe
This is a
maybe
good
that's why.
opener, but it suffers from going about 5 minutes.
So Eddie jumps Brian early. Eddie mocks Brian's glasses, and then he just launches them into the crowd. Brian gets a brief comeback.
Somebody got you in here.
Brian gets a brief comeback with a second rope missile dropkick. Brian dances, and then he gets caught from behind again. So that's twice within 3 minutes. So,
Good job, Brian.
well, I don't want to speak ill of, but whatever. There's a high back body drop to Eddie, which has become like my favorite move. Just a really high backdrop, because you never see it anymore, and it's just one of those moves that just is really cool.
The babyface comeback move.
Right. Brian hits the sweet chin music to Eddie for a 2. Brian hits a sit-out powerbomb, and he almost lost.
Sloppy.
Yeah, he almost lost Eddie on that powerbomb. He overshot it by a little bit.
And then they go for the finishers.
Yeah, Brian tried the top rope leg drop. Eddie moved.
Missed.
Brian missed
Eddie goes for the splash. Miss.
Brian missed a charge in the corner. Eddie rolled him up with a sloppy-looking La Maestral cradle, and he tried to use the ropes for leverage for the win.
Couldn't get it.
The timing was off, but Eddie picks up this win at 4 minutes and 30 seconds. It was a really fast opener, but it looked very rushed.
Short, like I said, if you give it 5 more minutes, especially on the show that only has 7 matches to it, you could have easily given it 5 more minutes.
Well, and keep in mind, both of these guys
especially since the show was, I think, less than 2.5 hours long.
These 2 guys were scheduled to work other matches, so they may not have had a whole lot of time to work something out. They had a very stringent time frame that were given to them by Sky Sports, and
I wonder, I mean, we know Angle and Jericho and Benoit and Regal and Taker and Austin and Triple H and Kane, but I wonder what the rest of this card was originally supposed to be.
Well, I actually have that here.
Go through it.
Go through here. I'm just going to scroll ahead in my notes. Okay, so what was being advertised throughout the weeks coming up? It was supposed to be a 3-way match for the light heavyweight title. It was supposed to be Crash, Malenko, and Spike. That was then changed to Malenko, Crash, and Jerry Lynn, which then was also changed. The tag team elimination match was scheduled to be all 3 Dudleys versus all 3 X Factor versus Edge, Christian, and Rhino. That got scrapped. Grandmaster Sexay was scheduled to face Rhino, and Hardcore Holly was supposed to fight Saturn in a singles match, which that one probably would have been a lot of fun.
More fun than the tag match that we're going to talk about next. And then the rest is what you already said, right?
Yeah.
And of course there was a women's battle royal that also got scrapped. We'll get to that later.
Yeah. Okay, so the next match was billed as... Well, actually, before that, we get a backstage segment with Triple H and Stephanie. This was just a standard Raw angle used to, insult England.
You're very calm tonight, Hunter.
2001 reverse biker hat Hunter. I don't know. That never really worked for me. So they're just sitting back.
One injury, Hunter.
Yeah, so they're just sitting back saying Undertaker will lose. We get.
It's the same that his career has to end in this crap hole England.
Yeah, so we get.
As opposed to any place.
Right. The Build 6-person tag match was supposed to be Malenko, Perry Saturn, and Terry versus Hardcore, Crash, and Molly Holly. Saturn and Terry are coming down to the ring. Malenko just looks lost in this crew because you've got.
Yep, and Terry does not have any ring gear.
You've got Saturn coming down with a bright purple and white feathery boa jacket with the big puffy white hat. You have Terry in this little mini skirt looking like she's going to go clubbing. And then you have pro wrestler Dean Malenko up in the rear.
This is what they're doing with me now. Shit.
God, how I used to love Malenko in WCW. He was so awesome. And I can't think of anybody from WCW that had a greater decline after going to WWF.
Unless it was like a lower card guy.
Right.
Which Malenko was, but
maybe,
an even lower guy than him.
Maybe Lance Storm.
Even Finlay got a push when he eventually ended up there.
I was going to say maybe Lance Storm, but at least in storyline, Malenko got to sleep with Lita.
Lucky bastard. I mean, anyway, yes. Terry gets the microphone, so there's not going to be a 6-man tag or 6-person tag because she couldn't find any ring gear.
In all of England, there is no women's wrestling gear for Terry to have.
England is sexist.
So Molly takes Terry down immediately, gives her an airplane spin. Hardcore and Saturn start slugging it out. Saturn
Wasn't it a
hit.
giant swing and not an airplane spin?
Where did I put airplane spin?
Yeah.
You're
I
right.
think it was a giant swing.
It was a giant swing.
The old school women's wrestling spot. The giant swing.
Because the whole point of this match was a tease so that the cameraman could look up Terry's skirt.
We got an ECW cameraman, apparently.
So Hardcore and Saturn start, and they start slugging it out. They start throwing some nice belly-to-belly suplexes on Crash. Malenko tags in, really fast-paced. Saturn hits a brainbuster on Hardcore for a near fall. There's an exploder suplex. He then misses a top rope elbow. Hardcore tries an Alabama jam, but couldn't hold him up, and he just kind of collapsed. I don't know what happened there. There's a hot tag to Crash. Crash runs wild briefly, but Saturn cuts him off.
Yes, Crash is the hot tag here instead of the guy getting beat up.
Right, the 5'4", 175-pounder instead of, the big tough Hardcore Holly.
Hardcore Holly. That makes sense.
Crash hits a running bulldog. He goes for a cover. Terry runs in to break it up.
Catfight!
Molly then runs in, and they do the catfight spot, being separated by Malenko and Hardcore.
Why would you separate them? Let them go.
I don't know. It's so, and then Saturn hits that. I don't know, that spinning. Help me out here.
Cover three-handle family Gudenza. Swinging fisherman slam.
It's the spinning perfect plex. And
yes.
He hits that on Crash for the win at 5 minutes and 37 seconds. This was just a Raw match.
Yep. And next we get a segment of William Regal doing an autograph signing with some fans that reminded me of SummerSlam 92 for some reason.
I think I know where you're going with this. Why? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Does Vince have some sort of vendetta against British fans?
Why is the heel doing an autograph signing?
Because he's from England. He's the goodwill ambassador.
Except he's gonna get booed in about an hour.
Well, for part of it, yeah. So they interview some British fan, and this one girl, she's crazy in love with Regal. She's putting him over, but she's wearing a Y2J hockey jersey. Who is his opponent in the match? Now, this was before I realized that was prior to the lineup changes. So apparently she didn't know either. So
William Regal's gonna win whether he likes it or not.
I was just gonna ask you if she was smarter or dumber than the SummerSlam '92 kid.
Well, by the looks of her, probably a bit smarter, but not very much. A couple of steps up the evolutionary ladder from the SummerSlam '92 kid.
I wonder what that kid's doing. Let's see.
Drinking pints of Guinness in a local English pub.
92, that was what, 26
years ago.
26 years ago, and he looked like he was about 12 then, so... Let's see, I don't know.
38? He'd be almost 40.
He'd be my age pretty much now, or close to it.
Yep.
God.
Probably nothing. That was his 15 seconds of fame.
So we get Regal. He's back in his office, and he's talking on the phone to his uncle, saying that he's the only sports hero this country has left, because Lennox Lewis sucks, and, I don't know, he mentioned someone else, probably some soccer player, and he has the Queen's Cup on his desk, which is a trophy that, it's basically a knockoff of the Stanley Cup, with a plain engraving on the front that just says Queen's Cup. I can't imagine this costs more than $40 for the props department to find and create.
Looks like a giant pepper shaker.
It does. And when it was sitting on his desk, I thought it was a lot bigger than it was, but later on in the show, we see this cup live, and this thing's tiny. It's like the size of a Pepsi bottle.
Here comes the Big Show.
So 2 weeks ago, Big Show took out Test, thus canceling the scheduled match, air quotes. Big Show comes down, grabs the mic, and is mean, and he's a heel, and he says, "This is a rinky-dink island for nothing, and why did I come to this place?"
Test has yellow-itis, which you people from Britain would know a little bit about, because he's a coward.
Yeah, he must have called him coward about 97 times.
The word of the day.
He's a coward. You're a coward. You start blah, blah, blah. As he's yelling, you can see slobber and spit and going all over his mouth. He's totally hooching this thing.
And Test comes out.
He's wobbling down. He's such a great actor. He's selling his ribs. If I had broken ribs, why would I get on a plane?
Yeah.
The change in air pressure would accentuate the injury. This is common medical knowledge.
Yep.
But not for tests, not for these superstars. Fuck what doctors say.
Fuck the doctors.
So Big Show calls him a coward for the 104th time. Test removes his shirt, exposing tape ribs, and they start fighting. A ref just then suddenly appears, and I guess the match is on.
Nope, they just have a brawl, and then Bradshaw comes out for some reason. Because he just happens to be there, too.
Yeah, show is like, he beats up Test, he leaves him laying, he's walking to the back, he gets on the microphone.
Nobody can face me! Nobody in that locker room! Done. Done.
APA's music hits, Bradshaw comes down, they start brawling in the aisle. This goes about 4 minutes, Test ends up back in the ring, Big Show has a chair.
Boots the chair in his face, and Bradshaw hits the clothesline. Somehow, none of this is a DQ. This was stupid.
This was a useless segment. It went 3 minutes and 20 seconds. This was definitely the weakest segment of the show, completely not needed. But you had to build up Big Show for that big rematch against Test.
That nobody wanted to see.
We have to protect Test. We got Coach in the back interviewing Steve Austin. Steve's got scars on his head from when the Undertaker threw him through the glass window. Undertaker's career will end in this piece of crap country.
Same promo as earlier.
Are they that unimaginative that all they can do is just insult the host country?
Is Kevin Dunn writing the promos back there?
Oh, he's not writing the promos, but we know that he's in charge of the camera. I'm going to get to him in a second.
We have a 4-team match next. Edge and Christian, the Hardys, the Dudleys, and X Factor.
For some reason.
Because we don't have a fourth good team.
This was the match where I realized how terrible Lillian Garcia was at her job at this point.
Yes.
This is the Hardy Boys. The Dudley Boys.
Edge and Christian.
Edge and Christian. You're supposed to have a downward inflection when you say that. So
Edge and Christian.
There you go. So Michael Cole asks, is this the best 3-team rivalry in history? And Heyman says, no doubt, but with X Factor, it's even more intense. It's like, no, Paul, you're wrong. It's worse.
I know a lot about Just Incredible. I'm the only guy that ever pushed him, and he didn't really deserve it.
Just because you're a Just Incredible nut hugger does not mean that this 3-way feud between Hardy's, Dudley's, and Edge and Christian makes it any better. This was a completely inconsequential 4-way. It didn't lead to a number 1 contenders. It didn't lead to anything. The winners of this match did not get a title shot.
Nope, just 4 teams that happened to be there that day.
5 minutes and 42 seconds is the first elimination. Jeff hits a swanton on X-Pac to confirm my suspicions that X Factor was the least valuable member of this match.
In case you didn't already know.
Right. If there were any doubts saying that,
This is X-Pac in 2001, you know.
Was Just Incredible the first ECW guy that they started to use on a regular basis? Because this was before the invasion.
Raven had gone there in September of 2000.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
And Taz.
Right,
and the
but
Dudleys.
were they considered part of... No, yeah, I guess they were considered part of the invasion, but not until after.
Right.
I officially declare the invasion the night that...
Raven...
The night that Lance Storm
Raven was
came
the first one. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
But this is how low he was on the totem pole. So 20 seconds after that elimination, Christian hits the unprettier on Jeff to eliminate the Hardys. So we're now down to Dudley's.
Yep, and then we go about probably 5 or 6 minutes with Edge and Christian and the Dudleys.
There's a sign in the crowd from a gentleman who's telling us that he likes grapes. That's good to know.
Good for you.
I was wondering if that was either the fruit or Hockey Night in Canada icon Don Cherry. So there's quick tags between Edge and Christian working over Devon. Devon countered a superplex. He missed a hot tag. Then he got the hot tag. He started cleaning house. They did the what's up headbutt on Edge. Hey, Mike.
What?
Get the tables.
What?
God,
Oh, God.
This show's going to require so much
And then
editing.
I'm going to get gored by Rhino.
Dudley's hit Edge and Christian with the tables on the outside. This is not a DQ, apparently. Rhino runs in, gores Bubba.
It's also not a DQ.
Paul Heyman's head explodes. Gore, gore, gore. and Edge covers him for the win at 13 minutes and 20 seconds. And then Spike runs.
And Rhino brings in the table, and you know what's going to happen next.
If you set up the table, you take the table with the lightest looking 3D that I've ever seen, which rendered him deceased for months. Okay, we get highlight footage of them at a charity event, which was highlighted by Stephanie
for some reason.
Because they were taking questions from the crowd. Someone in the crowd asked, "Why is Stephanie such a bitch on TV?" And they threw Michael Cole under the bus, saying he's the one that wrote the question. So Stephanie slapped him, and that got the crowd at that charity dinner all happy.
And Heyman pops hard for the slap.
They pan the crowd in the arena. They find some local British celebrities, none of which I've heard of.
Yes, because Ricky Hatton wasn't going to be involved with WWE for another 10 years.
I noticed on the timeline video player on WWE Network that there's a long gap, and I'm thinking, oh, this must be where the Benoit match is. Sure enough.
Nope. Segment.
Oh, that's a stupid segment. Okay. We got John Coachman interviewing Kurt Angle, saying that his gold medals were stolen. Completely useless segment. Still weird seeing Kurt Angle with hair.
Yep.
And then we get Steven Richards and Ivory from Right to Censor coming down.
As Paul Heyman is talking, and the Right to Censor music hits. Almost on cue.
Their remix version.
We gotta censor someone's commentary.
So this was supposed to be the spot for the women's battle royal. Ivory
with only four women scheduled for the match.
Something like that.
And Steven Richards is mad about naked breasts on the newspaper that you read to your children.
I guess in England they
that can be read by children.
British children can't read. Come on.
Or that can be seen by children. Are they all blind?
So Richards says that he spoke to Regal and he's been given the power to censor the Battle Royal. Richards then individually introduces Miss Jackie, Trish Stratus, and Lita.
The reactions get bigger for each one that comes out.
They all come out one at a time, and they're like, what's going on? And they're shrugging their shoulders, and they don't know what the deal is. And Ivory calls them whores. All three women attack Ivory, strip her down to her granny panties, and she bails.
They also beat up Steven Richards.
Oh, not before Trish tries to get with him. But it was a trap. These devilish women.
Just to kick him in the balls.
Just to give him a low blow.
You devilish women.
Lita delivers a moonsault, and Richards bails. This was a terrible segment, but probably better than having to watch a 2001 Women's Battle Royal.
Each one of those sounds terrible. But anyway, next we have a Benoit Angle. We show the video package of I guess what happened on the Raw after Backlash.
Yeah, they wrestled at WrestleMania, they wrestled at Backlash. So, hell, now we're going to put them together again. Because why not? This time it's 2 out of 3 falls. Did you catch Paul Heyman's math lesson during this match?
Is it better than Steiner math?
This is a direct quote. This is from former ECW creator Paul Heyman, managerial genius, surefire Hall of Fame. There's only a 6-pound weight differential. Angle at 237. Benoit came in at 229. That's 8 pounds.
That's 8 pounds.
He would reference this 6-pound weight difference twice during this segment.
Mafu, why aren't you putting these botches in Botchamania?
So there's a lot of nice mat work / fake MMA to start. Heyman says that because we're on in Australia, obviously Crocodile Dundee is watching. I'm guessing not.
Nope.
Angle
Oh, Crocodile Dundee.
That's a knife. This is also a knife. I got nothing.
That's a knife.
So Angle and Benoit are exchanging some cool-looking overhead belly-to-belly suplexes as only they do. Benoit hits the 3 Germans. He slowly clumps to the top rope. He hits the top rope headbutt. And he scores the first pin. Very anticlimactic.
Yep. The life of the wife is ended by the knife.
God. So the crowd was as disinterested as you can be in a Benoit Angle match.
They were. They're blowing air horns, everybody.
Did anybody have cooler looking work punches than Kurt Angle in 2001?
Probably.
I don't think so. I think maybe him and Austin were probably the best at that time frame.
Yep.
So the second fall starts. Angle locks. Okay, this is okay. Kevin fucking Dunn. Angle locks on a chin lock on the mat. They're like right close to each other. The camera guy zooms in and you can hear them talking, calling spots. WWF did this all the time, and it always pissed me off.
And people only notice it now because it's John Cena.
Well, this was not the worst case of calling spots. We're going to get to that in the main event. So,
oh no.
Benoit hits another series of 3 German suplexes. He again goes to the top rope, but this time he misses. Shocking. You think this is going to lead to something? All it does, each guy tries their respective submissions on each other. They both counter. Angle tries a spear. Benoit rolls him up in a small package for the win. 2 straight falls at 14:23. So one of the main stories of this match is Kurt Angle is too distracted to wrestle because he's so concerned about his gold medals, and before the match...
Don't you worry, Kurt. They're in a nice warm place.
Which means his balls. And as Benoit leaves, he pulls the dollar store gold medals out of his crotch and puts them around his neck.
That's disgusting.
I don't want to make any jokes about anybody putting anything around Benoit's neck. I guess I already did. Complaints about the Angry Marks podcast can be sent to Stevie J.
And we get a Regal versus Jericho video package of the Duchess of Queensberry from Backlash.
Yeah. Do we want to talk about Deborah before that?
No.
Okay. Meaningless segment. Go back and watch if you really need to know.
Go get us some drinks. No, I'm not an errand girl. End segment.
Well,
you are if you want to keep your job there, Deborah.
Actually, no. So they bring out the Ghetto Stanley Cup. They do a video recap of the Jericho-Regal feud, including the greatest spot ever where Regal was drinking his tea after Jericho pissed in it. The greatest facial expression ever, all time, all my life.
You do not besmirch, you do not soil the commissioner's tea.
What does earning the Queen's Cup get you?
Nothing.
Did they mention it at all? Did they say what the lineage of this prestigious...
It gets you a trophy shaped in the shape of a pepper shaker.
They talk about how Linda made a hell of a card, changing every single match except for the main event.
No, she didn't. Original card actually sounds better.
Paul Heyman kept referring to Regal over and over again as the physical commissioner. As opposed to what? The emotional or psychological commissioner?
Let's get physical.
I'm just an emotional commissioner. I want to talk about your feelings.
I'm a psychological commissioner. I'm Fraser Crane.
Regal is sporting this giant bruise on his left leg. It looks like it's about a square foot. This thing is just ugly and round and purple. And I don't know if he got it in this match or previous to this, but it was prominent.
Heyman also said he was a big fan of the Duchess. I would be too. She was a handsome woman.
So Jericho hits a top rope Rana. Regal comes back with a German suplex with Jericho landing right on the top of his head. Regal working over Jericho with a Cobra Clutch. Teddy Long's the referee. He does the 3 arms, dropping gimmick, and Jericho hulks up. Makes a brief comeback. Jericho gets locked in the ropes, and Regal lays in some heavy left hands. Still don't know at this point why the Queen's Cup is so prestigious. They haven't said anything. They haven't explained it.
Because it's been endorsed by the Queen of England, whoever that was at the time.
Okay, great. Then at least,
she could have gotten a better looking trophy.
Say that on TV, though. There's
I'm making a joke. I'm not sure why it's important.
This is real. Come on. It's still real to me, damn it.
Okay.
Jericho rolls through a suplex attempt. Jericho quickly slaps on the walls of Jericho. Regal taps immediately. And I don't have the time on this match, maybe about 14 minutes. It was probably the second best match on the show. Regal was a heel this whole match, but after the match, the referee awards Jericho this Stanley Cup looking like replica, and Jericho, being Canadian, knows exactly how to hold this trophy. And then Regal attacks him from behind, and he breaks the trophy over him, a la Bad News Brown and Bret Hart at WrestleMania 4.
Of course, it's a trophy in a wrestling match.
And he gets a huge babyface pop for this.
That makes sense. You're a heel.
What did this lead to, anyways? Because Jericho pretty much went...
Nothing. I was going to say, because their feud on WWF TV here in America was over after Backlash. Because Regal ended up feuding with Rikishi for some reason.
And then Jericho and Benoit.
End up winning the tag titles after Judgment Day. So, no, it led to nothing. Non-canon!
I want to see the Queen's Cup back.
Said nobody ever.
I'm saying it now for the record. Bring it back. They can.
Oh, bloody hell.
They can replace the Dusty Classic trophy with this one.
They can do it in NXT UK.
There you go. Okay. Speaking of, I'm gonna track away from this a little bit. Why is in the men's division? Why is it the WWE UK title, but in the women's division it's the NXT UK title?
I have no idea.
Sounds like I need to get on this.
Sounds like a little bit of sexism, maybe? I don't know.
Oh, come on. Not in this company.
Not in wrestling in general.
Surely you jest. Main event time.
Anyway.
Okay, so...
It's a handicap match.
Only the people watching on TV knew. The crowd had no idea what the steps were for this match. I don't think they even knew that Kane was out of the match. So they bill it as, it is a world title match. It's Undertaker in a handicap match versus Steve Austin and Triple H. However, Taker can only win the title if he pins Triple H. Keep that in mind.
And you mean Austin?
Austin, right.
Austin's the champion.
Austin is, in fact, the world heavyweight champion. Triple H, just because he wants to hold down the upper progress of Chris Jericho, is the Intercontinental champion.
And Jeff Hardy, who had won the belt like a couple weeks before this, and then Triple H beat him.
Said, no, I need something else to take through baggage claim. So, if Undertaker pins Triple H, he wins nothing. And the match starts. Apparently, at the beginning of the match, no tags are required by the heels, and it's a tornado match, because the ref does nothing.
And they brawl for about the first 5 minutes.
Taker and Triple H brawl up the aisle to start. Austin meets them in the ramp. Taker clears the announce table very carefully. He lowers the monitors instead of just picking them up.
And it says, "What are you doing over here?"
Most of the time, a guy would just... Sorry, go ahead.
Bring the Spanish crew for the... I was going to say, they don't bring the Spanish crew over for the England show. So... Because why would you?
No, because we can only afford one table. And apparently they can only afford 3 monitors because Undertaker was very careful to remove these monitors from the table instead of just swiping them in one fell swoop like they're wont to do.
Damn cheap Brits.
This is about probably 10 minutes in. Steve Austin is still unconscious by the ramp. In the ring, Taker hits the old school on Triple H. Taker goes for the pin.
Vintage Undertaker.
Vintage. And then he goes for the pin. And why would he even try if it's been explained that he can't win the title by beating Triple H? This is dumb. And nobody's actually he's never actually beaten anybody with that. But there were fans
setup move.
There were fans in this crowd that legitimately thought that Undertaker could win the world title by pinning Triple H with the old school.
Marks.
So
Mark.
Austin is now back on the ring apron awaiting the tag, because now tags are required.
The ref doesn't know the rules. Damn you, Earl Hebner.
Austin nails Taker with a chair while Stephanie distracts the ref. Triple H has a reverse chinlock on Undertaker. This is Kevin Dunn's cue for the second time to zoom in and hear them talking and calling spots. There's a tag to Austin. Austin runs wild for a little bit, hits a Thesz press. Taker hits a running clothesline and both guys in the corner. Austin and Taker spill to the floor. Triple H comes off the apron to attack him somehow. Taker catches him by the neck in midair and gently deposits him chokeslam through the announce table.
Through the announce table. The obligatory announce table spot.
I gotta give it to Hunter, though, because 2001, this guy took a lot of table bumps.
2000 and 2001.
Which ultimately led to him being on the shelf for almost a year.
Yep.
Oh no, I guess his quad injury wasn't a direct table bump, but...
No, he was trying to do something, and he fell, and he tore his quad.
Back in the ring, Taker hits a chokeslam on Austin. Taker is stumbling around the ring, and he looks kind of out of it, and I was kind of wondering what was going on, and you could see blood coming down the side of Taker's face. What happened was...
He's wearing the crimson mask, by God!
What happened was he took a knee shot from Austin, and part of Austin's knee brace came unbuckled, and part of the metal clamp on his brace kind of literally almost stabbed him in the side of the head, and there was blood just pouring down, so I think he was kind of out of it. And after he hits the chokeslam on Austin, he's leaned up against the ropes, and you can clearly hear Triple H yelling at him, "Cover him! Cover him!" Did you catch that?
I did not.
As soon as he hits the chokeslam, go back and watch and listen carefully. I don't know if Triple H was trying to give the referee instruction to tell Taker, or if he was trying to tell Taker directly. Either way, it came across very clearly. So Taker goes in, covers Austin, just so Hunter can come in and break up the pin. Taker then counters the pedigree. He slingshots Trips into Austin. Austin takes over with his face buster on the knee, and this is Vince McMahon's cue to come marching down to the ring.
What the hell is he doing out here?
God damn it! I'm gonna hit you with a chair. So he goes in.
But I'm gonna miss.
I'm gonna take this chair, and my son-in-law's gonna hold Taker, and I'm just gonna swing, and Taker's gonna move, and I'm gonna hit Triple H, and that's exactly what happened.
Damn it, pal. I gotta make an appearance in the UK, pal.
Taker then chokeslams Vince, who is, by the way, the best team player. Vince went up for this chokeslam like a champ. Taker then...
And then Taker chokeslams Austin, and then he chokeslams Triple H, but he, for some reason, covers Triple H.
And he wins the match at
not the title.
At 17 minutes and 12 seconds. And this crowd thought Undertaker had just won the world title.
Nope. Didn't you hear the rules earlier?
Oh, in fact, no, I didn't hear the rules.
You stupid blokes.
So, Undertaker takes out his frustration on him being so dumb and not winning the title that he takes the chair, he bonks all three guys, Austin, Triple H, McMahon, and then he rides off on his motorcycle. Nobody understood.
Into the sunset.
Up the ramp, through the curtain. Nobody understood the rules of the main event, and as far as titles go, and it wasn't explained on TV very well either. And people couldn't figure out why Triple H was pinned, that Undertaker didn't win the belt. It was announced as a handicap match with the title at stake, so people expected that the title could switch if Undertaker won. So they are bad at explaining their matches.
Bait and switch. And bad explanations.
Which just goes to show how seriously they take these UK-only pay-per-views. The crowd started pelting the ring with garbage and glass bottles after Taker left. Austin, Triple H, Vince, Stephanie, and even Michael Cole and Paul Heyman all had to basically just run for cover after they cleared the air.
A riot ensued in the UK, you don't say.
Like we said, most of these UK-only pay-per-views come off as glorified house shows, and because WWF pay-per-views aired for free on UK TV, this show didn't come across as anything special. They were buying tickets to a live event that never sees major title changes, but they do see it on free TV, so this meant nothing to them.
Yeah, that's the problem with the UK shows, and also the card that got changed actually sounds better than the one that the fans got.
I think the biggest complaint for this show was from the fans was that they didn't get the Regal Benoit match that had been advertised for weeks leading up to this, and I think that actually sold the majority of the tickets.
As a Regal Benoit match would.
Like you had mentioned at the start, there's also a lot of complaints that this show only lasted 2.5 hours, but that's because the time slot the WWF is given for these shows is only 2.5 hours, and Sky Box Office didn't want it any longer or any shorter. So I guess their lineup was very stringent. So go watch the Benoit Angle match. The Jericho match was kind of okay. The Regal segment at the opening was kind of funny.
Other than that.
Rest of it was a bit of a miss. So that's going to be it for the review here. We actually have a question. If you have any questions about any shows that we're doing, that don't necessitate a 5-second Google search, I suppose you can send them to us at AngryMarksRewind@gmail.com. This question is from Mason.
Yep.
So, hey, thanks, Mason, for listening.
Hello.
I really appreciate it. And his quick question was, where was The Rock during this time? We hadn't seen him since Mania. And I believe this was the time frame where he was out shooting the Scorpion King.
Yes.
Yeah, that was supposed to debut in May of 2002. So that was one of the factors that led to Austin winning the title in such an aggressive manner at WrestleMania, because they wanted to write him off as, I guess, an injury angle. So that's pretty much it. So, again, thanks, Mason.
Did you see the Scorpion King? Because I did.
I did. I don't remember much of it, though. I may have to go back and watch it again.
Akuma Sente.
Okay.
I liked it. Yep. I liked it, but I probably don't remember much of it because it was 17 years ago, and I don't think I've seen it since.
I don't believe he had a very large speaking role in that one.
Nope. And on that note, next week we're covering Death Before Dishonor. In 2 weeks we'll have a proper Angry Marks Rewind. And I think we'll probably just wait till next week for you to make a pick, Rowan, just so there's no lag time and no one forgets.
If you want to hear what we're going to be reviewing for Episode 8, you're going to have to tune in to the Ring of Honor recap report of Death Before Dishonor, which will be recorded next weekend. In the meantime, you can also catch me doing the NXT weekly reviews on AngryMarks.com. Mike, how can people get a hold of you?
You can catch me on Impact Implosion, which I know this week's episode is up on YouTube. I'm not sure if it's been posted up on the Angry Marks site yet.
Okay, so you can stay tuned for that.
Yep, and on that note, we will talk to you next week.
All right, thanks, Mike, and you have a great week.
Yep, you too.
You're listening to the Angry Marks Podcast Network.